Okay, I'll just hold it. My name is Evan Yaski, a resident of Princeton on Hawthorne Avenue. And I'm interested in listening to the conversation. Thank you for the presentation tonight. Interested in sort of a planning concept of the relationship between the university and the town, and sort of the idea of boundary between one and the other. And I've resided in Princeton for about 20 years now, and so I've heard some of these conversations over the years, and sort of some of the language that I hear tonight echoes this idea of a boundary that should be sort of clear and enforced, and that when the university is concerned, or the town is concerned about when there's a neighborhood that it butts up against, that should not impose on that neighborhood and such. And I'm sort of curious about a different way of thinking about the relationship, and that the boundaries might in the future become actually much more blurred. And that I think that I've seen this over the years, and I think it's quite a healthy thing that there is more of a blurring, and that the residents of the town feel more engaged in the life of the university, and vice versa, for the students, especially at the university, but also for faculty and staff to feel that much more engaged in the life of the town. So I heard a comment tonight about the border feeling very porous for residents of the town, that it maintains sort of a park-like setting. And I really kind of thought, well, that's not my experience as a town resident. As a park, it's really that I feel invited to participate in the intellectual life of the university, in the cultural life. I mean, I thought just in the last week I went to an incredible lecture at the Woodrow Wilson School. I went to the Art Museum. On Saturday night I was walking and saw a wonderful fireworks show. It's, I'm sure quite a number of other people did.
It was kind of hard to miss the fireworks.
Yeah, so thank you for that. The house parties on Sunday I could have done without. But, but I think it goes both ways, that the students more and more, I think, do want to feel engaged in the life of the community. And just as an anecdote, my wife is on the First Aid and Rescue Squad and is a liaison with the university, and there are many university students who volunteer on that squad and gain incredible benefit, I think, from that. And I mean, the town obviously gains benefit from their participation in it, but the students gain a lot. And there are many other institutions and organizations in town that the students engage with, at their internships and other relationships. And so I would love to see, all joking about Hoagie Haven aside, that there become these more porous borders, and I feel, as talking about peer institutions, other universities certainly have sought to engage the towns that they are an integral part of, and what are the synergies that can be gained from deep cooperation between the two sides. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank you for saying that. I think we've had a number of conversations recently with Gail, and I think this is one of those areas where it would be very helpful to have a conversation with the Master Plan Committee about whether there's agreement that a certain higher degree of porosity would be a good thing. You mentioned the First Aid and Rescue Squad, and I think it is wonderful that so many of our students get involved in that. Some of you will know that not students, but for staff, we have this program now where members of our staff who are trained volunteer firefighters in their own communities, we give them release time during the day when they're working if there's a call for Princeton's Volunteer Fire Department, as a way of providing staffing for the Volunteer Fire Department. And that's a way for some of our staff to get into the community in a volunteer way. It's not, in that case, students. I want to say a word about park-like setting. Actually, Lee used that term. And
that's why I used it.
And that was one of the principles in the 2016 plan that we've fairly intentionally not repeated in this plan. We're not sure that's quite the right description either, right? there is an attractiveness to the campus, and there's a natural setting, habitat to the campus that we think is attractive. But we weren't sure park-like was exactly the way to capture that. So thank you for mentioning that, because it gave me a chance to say we have moved on from that concept. Do you want to say more about this general plan?
No, I think that, and again, thank you for your comments. It's a really important and not always common perspective. The concept of town and gown used to be very oppositional, one set of interests that did not mix with another. And in the work that we're doing, universities used to be mostly on purpose at a remove from other parts of a city or town, the idea that intellectual pursuit needed to be done in a quiet kind of bucolic setting. And Princeton's situation is a little bit distinct in that the town and the university shared a boundary, but at the same time it was certainly more apart than it is today. And I think just by necessity, because universities are growing, their home communities are growing, all of those boundaries, exactly as you've described them, have become much more blurry. And I think that's just a reflection of real life, which is exactly as you say, that there's so much for one to offer the other, and while the relationships are not always easy to sort out, it's worth sorting them out. And Ron talked a little bit about sensitive transition. I think that one of the hardest things is how can you mitigate negative impacts from potential higher level of development or higher level of activity on a university campus to make sure that that's appropriate for the neighborhood that the university bounds. And I think that's something that we feel very confident that we have the ability to contribute to, so that there aren't undue overspill activities. But at the same time, finding ways to make sure that the community at large still feels welcome at all times to be on the campus. And I guess I'd be interested to hear if you feel that there are any of the university's current edges that are more welcoming versus less welcoming. As physical people, we are quite interested to think about whether there are places that you would look for a little more of a welcoming kind of feeling.
Probably the eastern boundary at the E-Quad is a little problematic at the moment, but you talked about that already tonight, and I'm very interested to see how those conversations develop over the coming years.
Thank you. Again.
One anecdote that's a little off the point, but maybe not so much. I sit in an office where I get to listen to our student tour guides every day. And one of the stories some of them tell is that, I believe this is true, that if you go back to 1756, Princeton is the first university ever that wasn't built on the street. Right? Think about the great European universities. Think about the three older universities in this country. They were built on the street. Princeton, Nassau Hall, was built set back from the street. Right? It was a new concept. And one of the ironies of that is that one of our early presidents, John Witherspoon, one day looking out on that field between him and the street, used the Latin word for field to describe it. And the Latin word for field is campus. And so we think the first time the word campus was ever used to describe the grounds of a college or university was Princeton looking out on that field that actually does separate Nassau Hall from the street. So there's a long history here of being set back from the street. But my other favorite story from our history is in 1970, when our students really wanted to try to bridge some of that gap. The gates used to be closed all the time except for graduation, and then they were opened. And they've been opened ever since. And it was just a symbolic way of saying, no, we need to be connected to the town.